Welcome everyone to today's UPAA Live. We have three panelists. It's kind of a Q&A, Ask Me Anything special. And so we have Jessica Bartlett from Cal State and Chico. We have Sam Kraft from Texas A&M and Cary Edmondson from Fresno State. So welcome guys. Before we turn the time over to you, Glenn, did you want to take a few minutes to kind of talk about the symposium coming up?
I do. Thank you, Nate. And thanks for everybody for being here. So like last year, our symposium will be virtual this year. It will be hosted by the board of directors and we'll be using Wake Forest as our hub, or where all the Zoom meetings will come from. You can register this year. It's on the UPAA site. We are charging $29, and that's just to offset some costs. We are not making any money on this. It's all cost neutral, or cost without any profit there. So we hope you can be there for as many that you'd like. We've got 4 great speakers on the schedule right now. I know there's 2 more going to be added very soon. We've got confirmation. BYU is going to be hosting a session, and then also Robert's camera will be doing the same. So should be some pretty cool stuff, and hope to see you all there. We will have the new thing is we will have a vendor sort of hospitality room where there'll be separate breakout rooms for different partners, so you can spend time and ask questions about a variety of things, like how do I get my Sony lens fixed if it happens to break, something like that. So anyway, glad you're all here, and I'll turn it back over to Nate and the panelists.
Awesome. Thanks, Glenn. Looking forward to the symposium. Be sure to let people know. I mean, obviously it's communicated on the Facebook page, email and such. So before we start, I don't know if you guys want to kind of just do a quick introduction of yourselves. Maybe start with Jessica, then Cary, then Sam, and just give a quick introduction, and then we'll get right into the questions that we may have. Oh, sorry to interrupt you. So if you guys have questions, go ahead, either A, put them in the chat, or B, just kind of chime in when there's a minute.
Cool. So yeah, I'm Jessica Bartlett. I work at CSU Chico in Northern California, and I've been working for the university as a staff photographer for about 4 years. And I've been a part of UPAA for the past, I think this is my 3rd symposium now, which is kind of crazy. So yeah, so that's awesome.
Great.
Yeah, I'm Cary Edmondson over at Fresno State. Background wise, I've worked for a few newspapers, Maple City News in Florida. I worked in Las Vegas, and then a small one in California. Then been the campus photographer at Cal State Stanislaus for about 4.5 years before coming over to Fresno State, where I've been for, it feels like 10 years now, maybe.
So howdy, I'm Sam Kraft. I'm in College Station. I spent 15 years in newspapers before coming to higher ed, which is where I've been. I've been with A&M for the last 5 years through 3 different agencies, the Health Science Center, and then main campus marketing communications. And now I currently lead a team at Texas A&M AgriLife. I still work with main campus a lot, and I still do a lot of freelance contracting stuff around town. And that's pretty much me.
Great, thanks guys. So let's go ahead and just start with some questions. So any questions that you guys have that we want to ask the panel, we'll go ahead and open it up.
Hey, if I could jump in, we just had a big team meeting yesterday, which is kind of the reason I joined today. My boss came up and asked me, why don't we pay our subjects as models? And I gave her a hard no right away and just shook my head crazy and said, that's wrong, and we don't do that. And I went kind of down a various list of why, and I was hoping that maybe some people here could chime in on if they do, which I'm assuming is no, and if they don't, kind of what are some of the reasons or kind of some of the pitfalls that I could kind of propose to the leadership that would say, this is why we don't do it.
I'll start. That's never been a consideration for us. I will say with Marcom main campus, if we had, if it was an advertising thing, or if we had to do a VP or something like that, we would call in a makeup artist to have them style. And that's the closest thing I ever got to paying a subject to be there for something. Again, I never want to hire models. I think models are great, but I'd rather have kids, the real thing, and just try to pose them how I need them.
Yeah.
And I guess as opposed to hiring models, they were talking about, do we pay our students? Because our students have gotten pushback to say, why aren't we being paid for this?
That's the same concept as paying a model at that point.
Yeah, I'm curious, is that in relation to the sports stuff that's going to happen with name and image likeness? Because that's a big topic going on over here, is like our athletes want to get paid, but now it sounds, I've never heard anyone talking about wanting the, students get paid for the academic photo shoots. Like I've just never, we buy them a Starbucks if it's part of the props, but we won't go too much further than that.
We've done something where we brought like cookies to the photo shoot or something, but I feel like with students, like you want authentic students. And also it's like, where do you draw the line between who's a model and not? I mean, if you're photographing somebody on campus, it's like, they may be like, I want to be paid now, you just photographed me. So like, where do you draw the line? And I feel like it's just unnecessary costs for no reason, because models are in front of you every day.
Well, I think, and that was my main point too, is where do we draw the line? Let's just throw an arbitrary number like $200.
Yeah.
Well, then the students would say, well, we're being severely underpaid because we should have been paying, $2,000 for this. And then we get into this whole ball of wax that we're underpaying students. And then there's, everything else that goes with that.
As that goes too. That's a really bad precedent to start paying students as models. I would bring swag. There's some free swag that you could have or that you're wearing during the shoot. But other than that, I would definitely stay away from that. I think that's just a box of legal stuff waiting to happen.
Yeah, I think going more of the hospitality route, swag, food, that kind of stuff, beverages. But yeah, I think just kind of treating them well and making them have a good time, I think is probably what they'll probably enjoy the most anyways.
We've found that giving them access to the photos when appropriate is a huge, they go nuts for that.
Yeah, sharing your tags, like tell them, if it's an advertising shoot, say, hey, we're going to go on like at Tamu Social or at AgriLive Social, telling them where that stuff's going to go, where they can go see it and like tag themselves in it. That's been like the greatest benefit of all for them. Like Glenn's 100% right on that. Like that's really a big appeal.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Well, I was going to say, Mike, is the issue that you're having trouble finding models?
No, and so it's actually a new thing. We've had a couple instances kind of come up on campus to where student groups have kind of gotten empowered recently, to put it lightly. And so they started to try to, I don't know if it has to go with the athletes and, with other things, like that, but it's a very new issue. We've never had trouble finding models. We always have great students volunteer. We got a great working relationship. We give them the swag, we'll buy them the Starbucks. And everything seems to be good. And I think it was just a new thing that was approached to me yesterday. My boss was kind of like, hey, should we consider doing this? And I've always been, we always ask permission first. We get them to sign releases, and that's really where we're at. So it's kind of a new thing that I was faced with. And I just kind of wanted to, you guys have all answered it the way I expected you to. And I'm happy that you guys, basically said what you said, because that's what I was looking for. I just wanted to make sure that I was on the same page and whatnot. But when you guys share photos, because we do that as well, do you guys ever put like, hey, it's for personal use only, or do you give them carte blanche, or how do you, kind of do that? We embargo it obviously until the story runs, and all that, but is there any other kind of parameters you guys put on that aspect?
I just tell them nothing commercial use. Other than that, it's fair game for them. And that's the way we're a public university. So everything technically is free to get. So it's just a matter of me turning the switch on whether they can have it or not. Just the general rule of thumb, no commercial, no sales.
Yeah, ditto that.
Kind of an offshoot of Mike's questions is that what percentage do you photograph more marketing, commercial, advertising kind of images specifically for marketing, and what percentage of it is more editorial, storytelling, kinds of things?
You're talking about
Go ahead.
Well, I think lately I've been doing more editorial stuff with university communication. So it kind of changes though. I think like every month is different. And I also think a lot of the times photos I'm not even expecting to be in publications get pulled. So I kind of feel like it's kind of all over the place. I mean, but
I think for me, it's 50-50 because a lot of the stuff we do is used both ways. Currently, most recently, it's been more of like us trying to build a brand's repository and just filling it with images and content because they had nothing when I got here. So we've been heavily focused on assigning our own stuff and just going out and trying to make stuff that people need or to get them away from using stock imagery. So it's 50-50 for me.
Yeah, storytelling is what we're trying to push, and we got a new president that's going to be announced later. And if it's who I think it's going to be, they've already expressed that they want to tell more stories than we're already doing. And so that's the goal. But then I've been thrown into the fire in athletics recently because after COVID, they kind of slashed all our freelancers for the most part. And then I've covered probably like 60 or 70% of my assignments now have switched over to sports. So it's been pretty wild right now.
Do you differentiate between the marketing images as different settings, different, dam systems, or are they just all mixed in together? And
for us, it depends on the project. I know last year when COVID was a thing, we did a specific COVID project for a book or something, and that was a different workspace on brands that no one else had access to except that COVID project team. And then once those assets were used up, then they filtered back to the other galleries so people could have access to them. But as far as like specific marketing, yes, we do set those projects aside. Like this is marketing stuff only until it runs. And after that, you can have it wherever you want it.
Yeah, similar lines. I don't want to make fun of Fresno State, but I don't know if we have a great system in place in terms of like how things are held, because a lot of times it's just me making mental notes like, okay, Fresno State Magazine, I'm not going to drop those in our archive yet until they use them. Then when they're out there, then they go into the archive, and we have like 100 not power users, but we have 100 users on campus that can access my archive and use the photos for their purposes. So yeah, it's for me, it's mainly holding photos for people's needs, because if there's a request, they get to use their photos first, but then once they've used it, then it goes in the archive, and then it's free game for anybody.
Looks like we have some questions in the chat box.
Oh yeah.
I'm gonna do a follow-up question to what Cary was just talking about. What do you guys use to deliver photos to clients? And then do you have some kind of stock photo system that clients are able to pull from, or the campus is able to pull from whenever they have needs? And if so, or if not, what are the pros and cons to having that system?
Yeah, so we use just Google Drive to share photos, and I feel like that's something Jason and I have been talking about. I would like to have something that's better than that. Personally, with like side businesses, I'll use, PicTime or PixieSet, just as nicer. And I've had some people have issues downloading photos through Google Drive. So that's been something that I'm kind of wanting to work on with us. But then for stock images for people to pull, we use Flickr, and that's been pretty great. I mean, we have different folders for like student life and campus beauty and just really like anything you could be looking for. So just kind of the best of the best on there. And then if anybody else wants photos, we could just send them to them through Google Drive.
So we use brands, and I will sell brands all day, even though Caroline's not here to hear me. I will sell it all day long. I've been in Photo Shelter since 2005, whenever they first started, on personal accounts, and then brands probably about 5 years now with A&M and a few other places. It's essentially the same setup. We have a backside, which is our online archive. So we don't keep our raws there, but we keep our final selects, our polished images. We keep all those online. Our Marcom staff has access to those images just internally. And then on the front side of brands, we keep like almost like a portfolio of like agri-life, research, extension, like our categories all broken out, and we pull our selects into those. And then those are accessible to anyone in our Active Directory, our SSO system. And then outside of that, we keep the site public so everyone can see everything, but they can't download anything without contacting us. So like that keeps away media requests, just personal steals, that kind of stuff. We actually have media accounts that we've set up for people that we work with a lot, so they can get on there and not have to worry about going through things. It saves us a bunch of time on the back end of filling requests.
Hey, sorry, before Cary answers, Sam, can you just explain what the SSO is, the single sign-on, for those who don't
Yes. So I'm sorry. Yeah. So single sign-on is the greatest add-in that I have for brands that I use. I mean, everyone uses it. It's the greatest thing for user management. Essentially, it's single sign-on. It works with your university's IT department information. So anyone, like in my example, our emails are at ag.tamu.edu. So anyone with that email extension at the end can go there to the site and log in with their own personal credentials. And it goes through our TAMU system. It goes through our IT system. So as far as an IT world goes, it's super, super good for security because it's all on their end. So there's no usernames exchanging places, other places. And it makes your user management super, super easy because when they log in, they are automatically put into a generic all SSS user group. So I set my generic permissions to that group. So I have 500 people that log in. I don't have to touch every single user permissions. It's a great setup.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, as I mentioned, we use WebDAM over here, and pros and cons wise, I mean, I think every system's got some things that are good, and bad and some. But for us, the keywording option is what we like. We just like,
Yes.
if somebody has a keyword, they just type it in, they find the photo they want. For the most part, I mean, that falls on me to label it correctly, obviously, but haven't had too many problems with that. That being said, we're looking to save a little bit of money because budgets are always a big deal over here, and so. I know the CSU photographer, Patrick was he was working over on getting a deal with Photo Shelter. So I think we're going to make the switch after a year and try that out, because even when hearing Jessica talk, about like Google Drives, like there's in Flickr, like some people in our campus communication specialists, they use Flickr and they have different folder setups and it works fine. So a part of me is thinking like, you don't need to have too many bells and whistles, so as long as people can get to that photo, and if there's a keyword search or if you're going to make a lot of folders, that should work too. But yeah, we have follow up on Fred's question, on who gets access to the database. I mean, we don't give faculty any access to that. It's usually just departments that have needs to, create marketing materials for the most part. Yeah, we have about 100 user limit right now, so I'm up to 92. So I only have 8 spots left, but usually some people leave without me knowing, and then I just look. You can see when the last person downloaded a photo. So if it's been like over a year or two, then I can kind of cut them off and then have somebody new sign in.
Yeah, and then going off of that with what Fred was asking, we use Extensis Portfolio as our digital assets management system, and we also have key users, so we can't just give that to everybody. That's why we usually use Flickr or other things just for the general population. But we have like certain users for in marketing who can go on and like download whatever they want on that.
Yeah, there's another question from Jaron. He's on the
TikTok one. I saw that.
Yeah.
Do you guys use TikTok? Jaron's asking that. He actually set BYU Photo up with a TikTok, so we've been experimenting on that a little bit. Anyway, do you guys use TikTok, and do you see a place for it at your university?
Who's going first? Okay, Jessica. Yeah.
Whoever, sorry.
Yeah.
I do
Go ahead.
I see a place for it for sure. I think we need to stay kind of with the times, and that's definitely, even with Instagram, the reels, like that's something that we're not really using right now. We actually just got a new social media person, and she really wants to start doing that, so I'm excited. I think that's something we should do, at least for our university. But I also kind of am wondering what my place is in that, because it's like, okay, that's a lot of video and you can still use photos, but I was trying to figure out, like, maybe somebody else can answer this, like what our place would be with TikTok and reels, because it's more kind of video focused, but I think it's definitely important.
So just to counter that a little bit, when I was on main campus just a few months ago, our social media department, I do believe, is in the top 5 in the country with users and interactions and all that. It's a monster. And I mean, they're totally dedicated. There's an entire team of like 3 or 4 folks dedicated to those social media accounts. They swear away from TikTok like it is a plague, and I can't tell you why. I don't know. I was never privy to those information. But again, TAMU's at TAMU is very, very regulated, very curated. They're very, very good at what they do, and I just don't think they ever saw the need for TikTok. I definitely agree with you. It is definitely a younger market area that I think they should be hitting, but they just never saw the need for it.
We have a TikTok account too, but mainly our biggest TikTok influence on campus is we have these 2 women's basketball player twins, and they're 2.9 million followers. So we're almost going to piggyback off their success at times, so I haven't paid attention, honestly, to our Fresno State's channel as much, but I'm kind of with Jessica too. It's like, we're doing it, but it's not in my area right now, you know, with photo and even our video guys. It's more in the social media person's world right now. So I've explored TikTok and it looks pretty fun, but I need to up my game a little bit before I start going on there.
Well, if y'all are like me, like even when I was there, we or even here for that matter, anything that goes through our social channels, I can't put up. It has to go through our social media people. So they're very anti us just creating things on a whim. It all has to go. It's very planned out. There's all a strategy with it. It's a whole thing.
Great answers. Does anybody else? Who else has some questions they want to pop out there?
I like the one that's about your assignment self-assigned. I think that's a really good question.
Oh, yeah.
We're all doing that in some form or shape or another. A lot of our stuff, again, currently when I got to AgriLife here, they did not have a staff photographer before I got here, literally in the 30, 40 years this place has been around. So I don't know what they did for content. So when we came in and started building the brands repository, Laura is a good example who's here today. The day before yesterday, she called in the morning. She's like, hey, I just want to go out and shoot some pictures of farms and fields, and hey, cool, go do it. Like, not going to tell you no. I think if you're not generating your own assignments, you're really cheating yourself and not getting out there being creative instead of just, following a request from somewhere, which can be still creative, but I don't know. I think if it's on you, it's a little bit more fun. You probably get more out of it.
Yeah, Stephen Bridges gave his presentation a little bit ago, gave a great example of how he does that a lot over there in Tennessee.
Yeah, I loved hearing Stephen talk about that. I think that I personally, that's my favorite thing, is just to go out with my camera and not have anybody expecting anything and just finding what I want to find. I think Jason, who I work with, can agree, those are usually the best photos because you're, in the moment, you're just being creative. I think that it's hard to say how the percentage, because I think it's always changing depending on how busy I am. If I'm just busy with a bunch of assignments, I'm doing less of that, which I'm sad about because I want to do that all the time. But when I have more freedom with my time, I never am just sitting bored. I'm always out there with my camera trying to find things.
Yeah, kind of similar as Jessica's. There's been some months where I felt like I almost generated all the assignments myself, but then the next month I didn't do any assignments on my own. So it just depends, peaks and valleys kind of thing on where you're going. But the summers are definitely a little more challenging to, do self assignments, because once graduation's over and we have that 3-month gap until the fall starts, that's definitely a big time to try and do some creative projects.
Awesome. I have another question. I got a few questions, so I'm gonna piece them throughout and let other people have a chance. So what is some advice that you have been given at some point in your career that has really stuck with you and helped you? So for example, when I was at Utah Valley University, I was a really new photographer. And one of the things that my boss taught me there, he used the phrase, cover your butt and then stretch. So meaning get the shot that works. And then after that, then, push yourself, get something else. And that's made a huge influence on kind of what I've done. Is there any advice that you've been given that you can share with the group that really helped you?
I think for me, the phrase Jason would give me all the time. I used to be a student. Is just that you're responsible for everything in your photo. And I think that kind of takes away any excuse you might make. I could go to an assignment and be like, everything's ugly. It is what it is, but I'm responsible. So I need to make it something that's actually interesting that people want to look at, something that's really cool. So just remembering that, being I am in charge here. I'm not going to let the circumstances take over. If it's a rainy day, whatever's going on, I need to make the most of it and be responsible for everything I'm taking photos of and not just make excuses.
Love that.
Yeah, I kind of had the same advice that you got, Nate, too, about the whole operating system for me is I got to get a usable shot first. And then after I get that shot, I can have some fun, it's kind of the theory too, one for them, two for me, or two for them, one for me. You have this whole theory about how, when you start doing some creative stuff. But some other advice I got too, that when I was at the newspaper world, is just never leave early. You can leave early, but don't just get a shot and leave, because things happen after the fact. And it also goes into kind of piggybacks that whole philosophy of like, if you stay a little bit longer, you have more time to create, more time to play around. And so they kind of work hand in hand. But I've just noticed, like, I've worked with some photographers at the newspapers when I was a photo editor, and it was like, these guys are so busy about getting to their next appointment or having a little gap time for a longer lunch that they would just take off. And then I'm over here, like, sometimes like the most boring assignments is like a little kid reading in the library, and like they would just take the shot of a kid reading, and they want to get like the cool, you know what I mean? Like they want to try extra hard to get like something out of it. And so to me, it's just like, just use your time. We're all getting paid to work, so it's kind of like make the use of your 8 hours each day.
Yeah. And I think just making the extra effort's always worth it, whether it's staying a little bit later or, bringing your camera to, just in case you're going to campus. I don't know, just every like a little extra.
That's very ambitious though, Jessica. Be careful. If you bring your camera everywhere, people will start expecting you to be working like day and night.
Well, I bought a camera purse. So basically it's a purse that I can put my mirrorless in that nobody knows I have my camera on me when I have it. So I'm like kind of ambiguous, but yeah, I just think like just making the extra effort, like it's easy to just be like, oh, I'm tired. But I think just like, that just makes the biggest difference, at least for me, I feel like.
So for me, Nate, definitely the CYA method is great. Also, growing up in the photo world with newspapers, Robert Seal was kind of my mentor and everything. And he was real hard on telling me, when you go to an assignment, shoot what you need to shoot, kind of like what y'all were saying, but also, don't leave unhappy. You stay until you make an image that you want to make. And every assignment you go to, you should treat it like you're going to try to make a portfolio image out of it. It might not turn out that way, but go into the, if you're out shooting like grip and grins, and grip and grins are awful, but you know what, try to make a portfolio out of it. Like it might not be a good one, but do the best that you can. And most importantly, be happy with what you're doing and what you're trying to create. I think a good example, we had a shoot the other day, and we scouted the day before. We scouted at 3 different locations, and of course we get there the day of, and the very last one, I end up doing something that I didn't do during scout, but ended up being a lot better than what we'd done. So, stay open-minded and try to create things on the fly that might not work, but give it a shot. You never know. What's the worst you do? Delete it?
Exactly. And have fun.
Yeah, have fun. Gotta have fun.
Love it. Great. Before people can jump in, but there's a few questions in the chat. So how do you see the role? Oh, I just lost my place. How do you see the role of university photographer changing over the next 5 years, and what would you hope to see it become?
I have this. So my previous position was a multimedia project coordinator, with the mindset of me being more photos than, probably 90% of my time was photos there. But since, and even while I was there, it all depends on leadership too, mind you. The leadership was not very photo heavy. They were very video driven. We actually had a number. We had like 300 videos a year was the request between 3 people, which is outrageously not acceptable. But in my role in here in Texas or at A&M, what I've seen, there's been a lack of, for lack of a better term, caring about photos and photographers, about what they do and how the work is perceived. They perceive video being the bigger bite to social media and all that, which is hurtful. So I would like to see that change. And that's something I work to change every day, is to change the perception that photos are still important. Not everybody can make them. I don't care if you have an iPhone or $1,000, $6,000 camera. Just because you have one doesn't mean you know how to use it. And changing that perception in people's minds that everyone is not a photographer is what I want to do in the next 5 years for sure. Because I think it's just going to continue to get worse. That mindset is.
Man, I mean, you worry me because, yeah, I agree with everything that you said, but yeah, I guess the trick is kind of conveying that message, because I work with that all the time. We got 3 videographers at Fresno State and a videography student, and no student photographers or anything. And so they basically, they've dumped all their money and all their stuff into the video world. So it's kind of like, if you ask me, where do I see things going? I worry that like video is, even when you look at jobs for photographers at universities, half the jobs I see now are photographer/videographer jobs. There's not a dedicated one or the other in half those positions that are open. And then I've talked to videographers, and they're very defensive of photographers too. They speak on my behalf. They're very proud. They say that like, hey, our photographer is not videographer. Our videographers aren't photographers. And they try to separate that, like, we're all have our specialty in our craft. But from the higher ups, and when you work in a university system and they're not all creative services and marketing people, there's a different outlook that they'll look at us and just think like, oh, we're all the same. So yeah, I will say ditto to a lot of what you said, but then I'm also concerned because I'm trying to think of ways that I can like.
Well, I'm definitely concerned. Let's not get that twisted.
Yeah, right. It's actually happening.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to think about, yeah, the solution to it all, because it's I got to think of a way to, because I mean, you can win all the awards you want and it still doesn't, it's funny, it still doesn't change our VP's mindset. She's still like, well, bravo, Cary, and it's
Well,
just,
you can shoot photos. Why can't you shoot video? It's the same thing.
Yeah,
It's not the same thing. That's the problem. It's not.
Yeah, I know. And the workload though, because after the sports stuff, like I'm trying to tell my boss, like, you might want to get a student photographer to help me out now because it's getting kind of excessive, so yeah, she's been good. My boss in marketing is good, but it's usually the ones that are outside of your department that are a little bit harder to.
It's the ones that don't see your day to day in what you do.
Yeah. I don't know if I answered Jason's question at all. I just like piggybacked what Sam said. Sorry, Jason, but yeah, we got to think of creative ways to change the way people view us.
Yeah, I hear you guys. I think it's really funny to me, the whole video concept. Like, so often people ask me if I could take videos when I'm at a shoot, and I'm like, I am not prepared. I don't have a tripod. Like, I'm not a videographer. So I mean, I can do some short clips. That's not what I like specialize in. And so it is kind of frustrating when people just expect that of you and they think it's like one of the same when you're a photographer, because it's not. I think I'm going to answer the second part of Jason's question, because I do agree with you for the first part about what I hope to see it become. I'm really hoping that looking forward, I mean, especially with this pandemic and everything, I'm hoping that we can start working more with marketing and having more of an impact with that. I think that as much as like everybody thinks they're a photographer with their iPhones and they can buy their fancy cameras, it's not the same, and I think that it's really important to have a image of your university that's cohesive. And I think, just having random photos or even just random students sometimes it's just not cohesive. So I hope that we can just really grow with that and just hopefully it'll be still a need.
You guys are in communications, Jessica?
So I actually work in creative media and technology, but Jason Halley, who's the other photographer I work with here, he's in university communications and creative media technology. And so, I mean, I work with university communications all the time. So I really work with the entire campus, but pretty heavily with UCOM.
Because like 3 years ago, they moved a lot of us out of communications and we went to brand strategy and marketing. And now communications has like probably 3 people on staff.
Yeah.
So they just switch.
Wow.
Here's a question from Jaron. What do you wish you knew as a new university photographer? Because I think that's a great question, because there's a lot of younger members that have been
right
group, which is awesome. Like where was it, in Wake Forest? I feel like we had I don't know, it was crazy to see all the new faces and a lot of younger people, myself included. I still consider myself younger, even though my age probably doesn't say that as much. But yeah, what advice do you wish that you would have gotten as a new university photographer, or wish you knew?
Go ahead, Jessica.
Yeah, I think I could start. So I've been at Chico State working for about 5 years total. And I think for me, I would say to really take more control over my assignments. I think you'll get a lot of assignments, and I think it's easy to really get overwhelmed and be doing so many events. Like even just looking back pre-pandemic, I was looking back at my work and I was like, all I did was events. Like I got to a point where I was just doing so many events and it wasn't very strategic. It was just like shoot, like just get these shots, like handshakes, just stuff that aren't creative. And so I think when looking back, I could have taken more control. I could have been like, hey, I'm going to come for 15 minutes and get some shots. Then or we can prepare prior and do some, advertisement for this event, do something that's actually worthwhile. And so I think that really taking more control, because I feel like I didn't realize how much control I had, I think is really important over your schedule, over what you're doing, what you want the photo shoots to even become, not letting everybody else kind of tell you who's not a photographer, like actually saying what you think this can become as a photo shoot. And so, yeah, I just think taking more control and more of like a leadership role, and just in within the photography.
Great.
So coming from newspapers for so long, I definitely had a different view on assignments and photography and ethics and everything else. But I agree with a lot of what Jessica said. A lot of it is getting into a system and knowing knowing your people, first of all, knowing who you can say no to, and knowing who you can say, hey, why don't we approach this a different way? I'm very fortunate to have a boss and a support structure above us where we are pretty much anti-events unless the chancellor says so, which is wonderful. It really protects me because I don't have to be the bad guy. My bosses do that for me, and it's wonderful. And also my bosses, that they understand that what they're trying to build. So in my department, I am part of a marketing and communications group. So we're all in the same house. So they really want to push an editorial content based newsroom out. And that's the kind of vibe they want to go for. So and that, what I'm saying that is when you get to a new job, if you have ideas, speak up, because no one knows everything, and there's different experiences. And the last thing I have is be prepared for red tape. Regardless of, oh yeah, they're easy to work with and they're great. Don't believe that, because not everybody is, and you'll have to get around those barriers at some point in time, one way or the other, good, bad, or ugly, and you just need to figure out how to maneuver those things, because they are going to be part of your everyday life in academia.
Yeah, you guys both had good things to say that I could copy, but it's just a little bit of what you guys said, and then I think for me it was a little more like brainstorming sessions, because like a lot of times I would just think that I can go in and get a shot that somebody asked for, and like, oh, I can do it. But I think if I would explain to people like the time of day matters, or the situations, and brainstorming and planning ahead of time, like you can give somebody a more realistic expectation of what they can expect. I didn't always do that when I started out. Now I'm very much like, oh, I'll tell people no immediately now if I feel like it. So after 15 years, I'm like, nope, that's not going to work for you.
No.
Yeah, so I'm very blunt at work, and I just tell people how it is. But it's actually worked well for me, because I think if you can deliver it with a smile, people think that you're not, being mean to them. So like I just smile all the time and then tell them no, and then it works pretty good for me.
Yeah, no, Karen, that's a great answer. The last thing that I forgot: communication is the key. Talk about everything with everyone. It's the most important thing.
Yeah.
Because expectations are a real thing, and that's a lot of times they don't voice them. Cary's 100% right. Like say what your troubles are going to be, or what your thoughts are. Get up front and just be honest about them.
And some people worry about that, and that's, like I said, you learn through the years, because some people are afraid to say something to somebody because it might upset them. But I've noticed after I've told them all the things, oh, I didn't think of it that way, or that makes perfect sense, let's do it at this time instead, or have these people over here instead, or we can move to this location. All these things work out better in your favor the more you communicate about it.
Hey, piggybacking on that, how do you guys answer the question, let's say like take commencement, for example, and how do you go there, as maybe like a marketing photographer, and you're not there to get obviously every kid that crosses the stage, but how do you go tell like a specific program, why you're there? What is, I heard a lot of you guys, just saying I'm blunt about it, or I deliver it with a smile, and all great advice. But that's the thing that I really run into the most is, and Sam, I want to adopt your phrase of like, we are anti-events. That's phenomenal.
Yes,
but
so.
when you go there for events, so because I cover a lot of events, and you never want to do the grip and grin, and you never want to do that, but you want to be there for a marketing, for strategic purposes within marketing, right? So how do you then kind of relay that message to maybe the person who made you aware that this event was taking place, but maybe why you're there because you're from, let's say, a marketing department, versus documenting it for their purposes and like grip and grins?
So I think a lot of that begins again with communication and shot list, and just be upfront and say, hey, look, if you want something if you want so-and-so shaking so-and-so's hand, put that on the list for me. Make me a very specific 4 to 5 item list of what you want, and then trust me to go out there and do what I want to do and be creative and make you images. Every graduation I've shot in the last 20 years, going back to my newspaper days, I shot every one in an editorial content way. And I think a lot of marketing people like that look nowadays because it's more genuine. It feels better. It's kind of like wedding photographers, that they shoot them like docu style, because it looks better. It feels better. And if your people have never seen that, definitely bring that to the table, because it looks way better than, and that's just that, and that's my thoughts on it.
Yeah, I agree with Sam. So basically what we do is we get our social media people with the University Communications to give us a shot list. And then from there, we just have creative control over what we want to shoot. And I think just kind of like talking about that prior, like having a meeting and being like, okay, this is the plan. Like, tell me what you want. And then from there on, I'm going to do my thing, and just trust me that I'm going to get some awesome shots. So yeah, I think just communication, just like
we use the excuse of the small staff size. A lot of times, I don't know how big your staff is, but like I'm the only guy. So if somebody at their event wants this covered, I'm like, I'm already getting stuff for brand strategy and marketing for the whole university purposes. So some people actually get their eyes open because they're like, oh, there's a chance that a kid from our department might actually be used in this big material here or on this homepage, or, you know what I mean? So it kind of like lessens the blow because they're still being used, but it's kind of like the less is more thing, you know what I mean? Like you tell them like one great photo is better than 10, average photos. And so once people start seeing your work, I think it pays off a little bit more that way. But for the super big events, like you mentioned, like commencements, they have the companies that they hire with those grip and grins. And I just get out of the way and let them handle that, because I do editorial style too. And I just try to go for reactions. And, there's thousands of students at the end of the day, and people can't possibly expect us to get like all those students covered. So yeah, to me, it's just one great picture is worth a lot more than a lot of average ones, is what I kind of try to tell people.
That brings up another question that, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, I was going to say, like Fred put a question about photo shelter in here and user access. Fred, this might not apply to everybody, but if you want to send me an email afterwards, I'd be glad to sit down and have a discussion with you about it, because I've managed 3 photo shelter databases nowadays over the years, and I've gotten pretty good at doing that. So I'd be glad to talk to you outside of here to help you with that if you had some more questions about it.
That'd be great. Yeah, I'd love that.
So here's a question that me and Jern were talking about before that he was thinking of. As things are starting to, kind of, depending on where we're at, obviously, kind of get back to normal, or whatever normal is going to be, people going back on campus. What things have you guys learned, and what will you do differently as a result of, the pandemic and all that? I say that now because you talked about, banquets and different things. So our focus in our department, right, is to tell the BYU story. And so one of the things that kind of helped us to refocus was, well, going to some of these banquets or dinners or events, it doesn't really fulfill like our mission, what we're trying to do. And so maybe we do less of that and focus more on telling our story. So are there things that you guys feel like, okay, as a result of this, I'm going to do A, B, and C differently moving forward?
Definitely. I think kind of moving back to what I said earlier about what I would tell my younger self, I think, and what you just said as well, I think that really taking more control over my assignments and not just letting my assignments control me, just being, all of that, just kind of looking at what's coming in and being like, okay, can I do this? Like, does this actually make sense for me? And like, how can I do this in a way that will make me also happy, where I'm taking shots that I'm excited about? So I think just taking more control for me, and yeah, hopefully less events that are like grip and grins and stuff like that, because it's just nobody uses them and they're not really worth our time. So yeah, I think that's it.
You want to go, Sam? Or
No, go ahead. I'm still contemplating.
If you heard me mention earlier, I think the transition that our office is trying to figure out is athletics, because budgets, and I guess people don't handle their money very well in the athletics department. So they've just cut so many people that I'm doing all kinds of stuff, but the games don't bother me as much. It's like I'm going to practices now and I'm shooting all the guys on the team separately for their social media pages, so it's kind of like, it's funny because I got here when Derek Carr and Devontae Adams were here, and they wouldn't let me give them a photo because they said that would be a gift. Now all the players are demanding it. So like I go to a football practice, there's 100 guys there, and I got guys just like tapping me on the shoulder like, hey bud, where's my photo? And I'm like, you're the backup long snapper, like I don't know how to tell them that nicely, but it's like I'm trying my best to get as many things I can for the school's marketing materials. But now we're in this weird thing of like, the students, like not to name names, but one of our best players is coming back as a 5th-year senior, and he demanded in a meeting that he gets more marketing coverage for him to come back and play one more season for us. So it's kind of like, wow, it's just, that's the thing that we're kind of trying to process right now, is like, how do we handle this with a small staff and go there? But storytelling, just piggyback what everyone said. Yeah, storytelling is, I think, it's nice to see that everyone is seeing how powerful storytelling is and to keep it real. So we're going to keep on that push, and that's not changing through COVID. And I think it's just going to get stronger. But those are our 2 things. Storytelling and sports are the 2 things we're dealing with after COVID.
Nate, I think the best example I have for A&M status on how all that went down was, a lot of the stuff that we generated was from the way y'all were covering things and the way some other folks in the UPAA group were covering things. And, my bosses, when March hit, we were all sent home to work from home until probably October range, somewhere in there. But as creators, we were there every other day. We had a time shift set up, so we were in the office, we were not in the office, that kind of thing. But my background and the way my boss told me to cover it, he was like, I want you to do you, and you cover it like you would if you were still an editorial. So we documented everything. We shot it photojournalistically. That's the way we did things. So really, things changed. I mean, obviously, access was different. Safety protocols were a lot different, but the actual coverage of the things that happened were pretty much the same. Now, events obviously all went virtual. So that's in my role now, that's been a big change because now we video record an intro every single time. We voice over a slide every single time. We handle all that. We put all that together, that kind of thing. From the other point of view, as a freelancer and just what I see in college sports, which I think will apply to some of us if you're not a team photographer. So I covered the NCAA tournament in San Antonio as a wire person, and I was literally shooting from the fourth row of the Alamo Dome like rafter system. It felt like straight down, and talking to the A&M photographer, the sports guy here. I asked him, I shoot a lot of A&M stuff. So, what are the protocols for A&M seasons coming up in the fall? And he says, well, it's going to be wide open, but the SEC is still requiring X amount of people on the sidelines and so forth. So I think if you're not going to be in that team in the bubble, which it won't be a bubble, but it'll be the team bubble. I think there's going to be a lot of restrictions for access in certain places, and probably that will probably apply to events. I don't know about Texas because we're all pretty much yeehaw about let's get to normal, but there are still some things out there that are still pretty regulated, and I am most concerned about access of all this conversation. For this answer is access in all sorts of ways to certain things and the way things used to be that probably not going to be that way again. I don't know why we need to credential 10 photographers to this from this entity. We don't need that anymore because, they had the precedent that says we don't have to, and you got by without it.
Yeah. I mean, piggybacking that, Sam, that's why my boss threw me into the fire, is to get into the bubble. So she wanted to make sure that I was the guy that was getting the close-up shots. So that's why they threw me in. So the workload increased, but my boss looks at Fresno State sports program as like the front porch to our school, because that's what people see when they think of Fresno State is athletics. So she kind of wants, she wants that to be a big factor here. But the hard part is it's kind of like, that's where the balance is, because I'm like, man, the amount of stuff that they're asking for sometimes is just a little much.
I am mind boggled that at a school that big, y'all don't have more than one shooter. Like that blows my mind.
You're telling me like they have 2 videographers for athletics, 3 videographers for the school, and then I'm the only staff photographer. And then they have like a couple guys that they just pay, $100 per game for, but they cut a lot of that. And so basically I filled in the gaps, and now I'm just like, woo.
It's unbelievable, man. Hey, props to you. That's a lot.
It is.
And like you said, he says it with a smile. You guys see that?
Well, there's a great question about burnout, which I think that this goes right into, is that, and Cary, you go ahead, man, because you definitely, I think.
Yeah, well, that's why I was laughing at Jessica earlier when she said she brings her camera to campus like after hours or something. Because like for me, like I don't want to be that guy that's like, oh, I get off work, I'm done, I'm taking pictures. But I think it's because I work such a variety of shifts, as probably everyone in here does. Like some days I'm up at sunrise, and then other days I'm shooting at sunset. So when I'm not working, I kind of leave it at home. But I mean, otherwise, it's just having fun taking pictures of my kid playing t-ball and stuff like that. So there's always a joy in doing photography. Is probably why we're all doing it. So I think the challenges too, like going on UPPA sites and Instagram and seeing what everyone else is doing. I'm like, dang, they're doing good stuff. Like,
right,
man, like these people are getting good. So now I got to challenge myself, because I think I have that competitive nature. It's just kind of like, I don't want to just be the guy that goes to a place and just is happy with getting a normal picture. Like I've always been somebody that's like, I got to get something great. And even if it's a boring assignment, I'm going to try and get something great. And I think that's what kind of separates good photographers from bad photographers, is that you're trying, but you also have to have fun doing it. Is why we're in the business. So yeah, I mean, I don't think I've ever had a big burnout, but definitely I've got to the point where it's kind of like, whew, it's okay to have a glass of wine at night or something, and then we'll reset tomorrow. But yeah, for the most part, I'm having fun what I'm doing, and you just got to make sure it's almost like a not meditation type thing, but you got to just make sure that like, I'm not going to overdo it. I've still taken photos the next day, it's like, it's kind of like put yourself in a nice place to where you can keep a pace going, I guess you say.
Yeah, I think my answer for the burnout question is really, for me, like what I do is I just need to take care of myself. and make sure that I'm, rested and not working too crazy, because once you get too busy, you're doing too much, it's literally like you're just not even taking photos that you like anymore because you're just too exhausted. So I think really taking time for myself, if I really need to, maybe planning a vacation that I can look forward to, and then like relaxing, then just having time to rest and recharge and taking photos that you want to take. I think sometimes when I feel like I'm close to a burnout, it's because I'm just doing so many events or just things that I'm not having time for that creativity. So making time for creativity and also making time for rest and relaxation.
Yeah, I agree. I think coming again, I keep going back to it, but if any of y'all have worked in newspapers for a long time, like you definitely know what burnout is. The same thing showing up every day, go out and find me a wall art piece for the front page, and it gets so monotonous over and over and over again. And then you get into the fact of, well, yeah, you got 5 more assignments today. Good luck. Jessica and Cary both have really good advice. Just try to be happy, try to make good photos. I think we're all creative people. And for me, that creativity part, when I do get to shoot images or something, or even video, it's that little happy spark you see at the end of it. And you're like, this was great. And it's like a high, man. You just get that great high of making good content and like sharing it with the world. And it's a nice little bump. And I think I definitely get burned out. Burnout for me, like the solution is vacation. I take a week or 2 weeks and I go and I reset and I come back and we just start all over again. That's the biggest help for me is vacation time.
Great. We have a couple more questions in the chat, and we're getting close to time. So if anybody else has anything, feel free to either chime in or put in the chat. We'll first go to Jason's, and then we'll jump down to Alyssa's. So Jason asked, how do you feel about personal social media accounts being tagged on official university posts? Do you feel credit to the photographer is important?
I do, but they don't do it for me. I guess for me, it's kind of like, I think I've seen somebody on Twitter write something like, how come writers always, they get their credit in the story, like story by so-and-so. But a lot of times you see a photo and it's just, there's an empty photo. So I like to know, for one, that like, you're proud of your work kind of thing. So you want to have your work recognized. And two, when it's not my picture and it's a bad photo, I don't want people to think it's mine. So there's, because like you said, everyone is a photographer, on campus, and sometimes that's my hardest thing, is to fight some people from taking photos on campus when I'm like, wait, let me take photos of it, but yeah, I like credit. It kind of is not a conversation we've had too much there, and it's been lighthearted, so I'm not gonna lose sleep over it, but it'd be nice to get credit, I guess, in a short way of saying it.
Yeah, I think it keeps me accountable our campus is really good at crediting us.
I know, I saw you guys. I'm very jealous.
It's really nice. And I think it really keeps us accountable, because I don't want my name on a photo that I'm not proud of. So I think that's a really big thing for me. And Jason, the other photographer, he basically kind of made that a precedent. Like, this is what we need. We need credits on this, credits on that. And they just do it. And so it's been really great. And on social media accounts, they tag us on Instagram and Twitter and stuff. And I think it's really cool, because it makes people kind of feel like they like know who we are. And it's kind of more of like, it's more personal. And I feel like I've gone closer to the students too. I'll see students on campus, they're like, oh, you're the photographer. Like, I've seen your stuff. And so I think it's really fun, and I really enjoy it.
I agree 100% with what they said. And especially the tail end of that was that, when you do this job and you're out making images, you see stuff on billboards or in magazines, and like, that's cool. That's cool to see that stuff. But really, in the end of the day, they're just like, nobody knows who did that. And, we don't get a lot of recognition sometimes, but it's nice to get a little bit. It's nice to be known. And what I've tried to pitch to my bosses about the exposure page that we recently created, and because, there's a lot of thought that goes behind, what's the audience and what's this? And like, they don't understand that there's an entire audience of creatives that just follow creatives. They don't care about the other stuff. They don't care about the words. That's not what they're there for. That's not me. I'm a visual person. I like to follow creatives. And it's one of the biggest benefits of this group is meeting all of y'all and seeing what y'all are doing. It's really inspired me to do other stuff. And like, like Grand Valley, I cannot say enough about Grand Valley. The last couple of months, they have been killing it on their social media, and their pictures, their images have been so inspiring with building other stories and creating ideas on campus. I am definitely all for tagging it. AgriLife here, where we are now, does a pretty good job of tagging Laura and me and stuff. Main campus did never do that. I did ask them. It's not part of their social media strategies. That's not how they roll. But again, they're doing something right on the other end of things. I just want to get some of those, 20,000 likes on a photo in 3 hours. I'd love to get some of that. But no, it's promoting the brand. It's promoting you as a photographer. I think it's good. I think it's where people know who you are.
Have anything to add, Cary?
Yeah, no, I mean, I started off by saying, yeah, I'd like it, so it's like, I mean, it's interesting hearing Sam talk though, like our social media person, I don't know, because we've had it mentioned before, but it hasn't really ever been pushed. So I don't know how they'd react if we actually kind of tried to make a push for it.
Yeah.
Ask them. The worst they can do is
No,
say
I'll
no.
ask again. Yeah, sure. It's been a while.
And then they better give you a reason. That would be me. No, why not?
Yeah.
What is it?
Yeah, I'll ask. Why?
Yeah,
Very-
why?
The big benefit for us when we pushed our effort was the fact that we made it in the sense that we're ambassadors of the campus and it
Yeah.
personalizes our interactions. So having it builds the relationship with our students so they build more trust with us. And so it's not self-promotion. It's not, selfish of our own, pride. It's really a tool for us to communicate with our students and engage with our campus community. And that's helped, I think, a lot of make the justification for why credit is not just like, no, I just want to be noticed, I just want fame. It is more of a tool to communicate and engage with our individuals that we photograph.
Cary, you be by yourself. That might be the best argument you have for that, for that push. Like seriously.
Yeah, I think I've made something to Jason's point about interaction wise, because it's easy to get, Instagram DMs and all that stuff, and people know who you are, and you can set up photo shoots easier that way.
Yeah.
Great answers. So this will probably be our last question, unless somebody else has something they want to put in or speak up on. So for Melissa here, how do you take creative photos when you're at an event or a shoot that seems uninspiring or uninteresting to you? Where do you start? How do you make it creative? Not that any of us have ever photographed anything that we would consider boring, but if you did.
Oh, so you went somewhere much nicer than me, because I would just be honest and say sometimes I just don't. Sometimes it's a show up and you get there and you get what you need out of it and you leave. And I hate to say that, but that's what life is sometimes. Most of those are awards. Let's be very clear about this. Most of those are awards things, and you're specifically there because someone with a much higher pay grade than you said, hey, we need to be here. We need pictures of these people handing over plaques. At that point, you make what you need to make, and maybe you try to get some creative, juices going with, well, I still want to make a good image. I still want to, somebody is going to need this somewhere other than somebody just shaking hands. For me, it's just really about deciding to do it and making a creative effort to do so. That's a good question. That's hard, because sometimes you just, like I said, you just take it sometimes, and it just is what it is.
I think for me, for that question, kind of like what some other people were talking about today, like take the, security shots and then stretch and do something, different. I always, whenever I get bored at an event, I always just think like, what's the weirdest thing I could do? What's the weird angle? Like, what's something different? Like, nobody's going to judge me because I'm a photographer anyways. I can climb on things. And so even yesterday, I was actually photographing a drive-in movie for some seniors. And I was able to talk to the person who was running the projector, which was like up this ladder, like in this building. I was like, hey, can I like get up here and like get a high angle? Just like stuff like that. Just kind of like, I love being a photographer because I just feel like we could kind of like get away with a lot of stuff. So I think when in doubt, just like have fun and just do whatever you want, and you'll find something different.
Yeah, get weird.
Get weird. Yeah.
Get weird.
It depends what you're saying too, on like what Sam's sample versus Jessica samples are like 2 night and day. Like you got awards and then you got a drive-in movie. Like for an average kind of run-of-the-mill assignment that maybe just isn't good, because like for me the challenge this year has been with COVID masks. Like I used to look for the people that are the characters in the room and who's the laugher, the one telling the most jokes. So that kind of is not as often. So really I've just resorted to like doing the basic rules of photography, like, okay, where's a clean background, where's the light hitting, and sometimes a boring photo as a handshake. Well, if you can line it up correctly where something might fall off with a better background or a light, like a sun rays coming right through them. I don't know. But you know what I mean? Like, I guess I just look for the photo elements that might line up to make an average photo look a little bit more like, oh, that's kind of cool. So yeah, even like Sam said, it could be something so just a handshake photo, but if you can get a decent get your regular handshake photo and then you find a different way of, like Jessica's saying, like you're climbing up something to get a handshake. yeah, you can make a little something out of nothing. But yeah, the hard part is, can you make it like an A, or can you make it like is it just, where's your, where does it stop off, like an A, a B, a C? I don't know, but.
Yeah,
Awesome.
sometimes when I'm bored, I start just directing people. I don't know, like I'll be like, "Hey, do you want to do this?" And like, I mean, it's kind of staged, but it's fun because you end up really getting the shots that you want, and it's different than candid moments. But I'm like, I can create whatever I want, and I just start telling people what to do, and it works.
Great. Are there any other last questions anyone want to chime in? Perfect. Well, thank you guys seriously so much. Jessica, Cary, and Sam, you guys had some wonderful answers. I think we were well fed, and thanks for participating and sharing your experience and your advice and your thoughts with us today, and for everybody else that kind of participated as well. With that, I think we'll end, and thanks everybody for coming. It was a good day.
All right.
Thanks.
Thanks and gig 'em.
Thanks, guys.